I've been a Pokemon fan since I was a kid, and naturally I've grown in affinity towards the electric Pichu. But naturally as I've grown, the glaring issues that I've neglected has become a lot more noticeable, and I've especially noticed the flaws in Pokémon Legends ZA. And yet, I don't care. I still had a great time. Do you know how much that affects me? As a pretentious video game reviewer, how can people take my word to heart when my heart is easily swayed by a mediocre product from $1 billion conglomerate? You know how much that sucks? But to understand why Legends ZA is flawed, we have to understand why it's flawed in the first place. And it's mostly because that game freaky deaky game design is outdated by like 30 years. Numero uno. No voice acting, which would be totally fine if it's just reading, but if you have pre-rendered cutscenes, it kind of breaks the immersion where it's just like, no, that's so weird. You already have the voice actors from like the animated series, why don't you just import it from there to the games? It just seems kind of impractical. I don't understand. In a very heavy text dialogue heavy game, it seems to lack a lot of features, like there's like no fast forward option, making the story just seem like the hog and tedious to go through. And you can't even like look back at previous text so you can have a better grasp of the story. It kind of seems like they don't even care about the stories, to be honest. And the game is pretty expensive. It's no surprise that Nintendo's never lowered down their prices for their game. And having day one DLC locking behind some extra content that should have been in the base game, having like the 3 coolest Mega Evolutions locked behind a battle pass. I was pissed. Let me have Mega Greninja, I swear to god. And you also have to pay for Nintendo Switch Online, which don't get me wrong, it's pretty cheap, but paying to play online is kind of stupid, and it's like the least outdated trait of Game Freak. And even when they do try to improve on the formula, like adding new shit like the wild area, introducing some unique ways of capturing Pokemon by hiding in bushes, but with the game mechanic designed around stealthily moving around, there's a lack of areas to hide in. Seems like an afterthought. I'm just saying. And this game just seems like so poorly paced too, making the overall experience feel bloated and dragged out than it needed to be. There was 3 moments in the game where it felt like it was just dragging out. That really pisses me off. I had to freeze a water fountain with a Pokemon that knows Ice Beam. And you know, that's like totally fine. Like you want me to engage in catching with Pokemon, but having to move specifically Ice Beam, I'm like, oh fuck, now I actually have to go get a Pokemon that actually knows Ice Beam. It couldn't just be any ice adjacent attacks. Like I already had a Blastoise that knew Ice Punch. Just let me use Blastoise. There was this other one where I had to unlock a door with the Pokemon Klefki and like, oh, you have to battle this Pokemon and catch it. And I was like, oh, that's totally cool. Klefki is a cool Pokemon, but it didn't even work. And then the fucking guy just punched it. It's a shit gag. Still would have been funny if he punched a door. I did not need to catch Klefki. And there was this one last one, like in the Battle Royale, I ranked up like 14 times. It kind of seemed like they didn't want me to engage in like one of the main selling points of it being a Battle Royale. I felt like Game Freak even knew that that was boring. And with a game with so many dialogue text boxes, it's kind of crazy that a JRPG game has a bad story. That's like the main appeal. Final Fantasy VII, I'm fighting against $1 billion corporations that's destroying the world while having an identity crisis. That's fucking awesome. And Xenoblade, I'm fighting against a robot with a sword that can see through the future, learning that as the game goes on that the future isn't set in stone. What is fucking Legends ZA have? 20 bland characters in a VTuber that's actually a fucking grandpa. What the fuck? But despite these outdated game design flaws, Pokemon is the outlier for JRPGs for some strange reason. Like people actually want to explore and catch all these Pokemon and battle with them. You know how kind of odd for this for people that want to play the JRPG for the gameplay instead of the story? Not that many. Turn-based combat is surprisingly a huge turnoff to most people because it's not that visually appealing and it doesn't tickle the funny bone like some action games. But you could deal with the least stimulating gameplay because of how compelling the story usually is. But now with game budget increasing, big corporations think turn-based combat is unprofitable, making them switch into a more action-oriented gameplay style to aid their compelling stories. except for Pokemon, who stuck with it for a good 26 years, still raking in millions. And when they eventually switched to a more real-time strategy style, they realized, fuck, we're gonna alienate our fans who like the old turn-based games. Then they made another game with the turn-based combat, and then they're still raking in the big bucks. You know, if I would not care for Tawny, Lita, and Naveen if they were in any other JRPG game, but for some reason I kinda like them. I think it's really unique that they have their goals that's not entirely related to Pokemon. Fucking Lita just wants to become pro dancer and Naveen just wants to become a fashion designer, which is totally awesome. Naveen just watches VTubers and for some reason I think that's so fucking funny. But there's also not that many games that can match the charm of Pokemon. There's so many other creature collector games like Digimon, Yokai Watch, and Persona, but I am not attached to Personas like I am with Pikachu. In Persona 3 there's this persona called Sasuno, a Japanese god who's been cast out for lewd behavior? And then in Persona 4, it was replaced by an entirely different Sasuno that you can't use anymore and instead given to the protagonist's boyfriend. But I don't think anybody cared, but people did care when they removed the National Dex in Pokemon Sword and Shield, an item that gives you the ability to use previous Pokemon from past games. People were upset that you couldn't use Seal or fucking Duat, which is so strange. I'm sorry to the indie games, but in order for people to play your game, you kinda had to mention that you're like Pokemon. Sorry, that's like kind of the only reason why I played Moonstone Island and Cassette Beast. I'm really sorry. These are good games, but I only played them just because I wanted something Pokemon but also not Pokemon at the same time. It's so weird because Game Freak has the ability to make me like any Pokemon in and outside of the gameplay. Like, you know, in the anime there's this dude with Paul, the main rival to Ash Ketchum. He had this Earth Ring. He was just like a fucking beast. He fucking like, he was just like a fucking menace. There was this one episode where Ash and Silent fought this guy that had a Braviary and Trilbur, and they looked so cool. They had like combinated attacks, which made them really cool and unique. Harry Styles from One Direction said his favorite Pokemon was Sock, so naturally I started hating Sock in return. And when playing Pokemon Legends EAs, I have heard of stories that people started caring about this one Pokemon specifically. Trubbish. Originally, people thought this Pokemon was just like laziest Pokemon design ever, but it's fucking trash. But then it's like one of the few Pokemon that walks up to you because it's one of the few Pokemon that actually wants to be catched, because in universe no one actually cares for it because of the rancid order Trubbish produced. Because it's trash. People really sympathize with this piece of trash bag, and it worked on me too. It worked on me too, bro. And you know, and the Nintendo team also supports like the competition for Pokemon, like the trading card games and even Pokemon Go, but I'm mainly gonna talk about the mainline Pokemon games. But it is weird that a turn-based combat game has a competitive esports scene. Like, I beat in Pokemon Fire Red when I was like 6. What the fuck are these guys doing? But Pokemon just gives you a lot of opportunities to make it easy for you. By giving you really good Pokemon, you can easily overlap your Pokemon, and you can give your Pokemon performance enhancements drugs for some reason. I don't know why Game Freak is promoting drug use, but I guess it's the appeal because the game is just easy to pick up but hard to master. And I know that the game is really hard because I remember the Battle Frontier in Pokemon Emerald. In Pokemon Emerald, where at most you'll spend 100+ hours beating the Battle Frontier, and then the first 20 hours will be spent genetically engineering a competitive viable Pokemon, and then the other 30 hours will be spent on losing. Then if you're really lucky, you might actually win a couple, demonstrating that there's actual level to this Pokemon shit. Then they removed it in further entries because only a select few fucks decided to actually complete it. And if you really think about it, competitive Pokemon is just a more visually appealing trading card game. They're both turn-based, they have constant rule set changes, and team building in Pokemon is basically just deck building. And I like Pokemon Legends EA because it's kind of the Pokemon game that I always wanted as a kid, because the Pokemon combat system leaves so much to the imagination, so I only really had the anime to go off of to visualize it. Like, there's things that they did in the anime but couldn't do in game. Whenever Pikachu was about to get hit, Ash Ketchum would say, "Dodge!" And now in Pokemon I can just whoop, just do that. I was like, wow, this is just like what I wanted as a kid. They gotta add the move where Pikachu breakdances to make a lightning bolt shield. That was so cool, bro. And I understand that the real-time combat system isn't as complex and nuanced as like other games like Xenoblade Chronicles, but I'm sorry guys, I actually didn't really like Xenoblade Chronicles that much. I'm sorry. The story, it's basically like Naruto versus Neji in the Chunin exams, thematically, but for like 50 plus hours. Another thing that Legends CA grabbed from the anime was boom, side quests. And the side quests in Pokemon Legends CA just made it feel like those filler episodes in the anime where I just had to randomly help a Pokemon trainer with random Pokemon problems. Like there was this one where an Ampharos or Manectric was fighting over an electric elevator because they're both elevator enthusiasts, and you're even able to catch Pokemon from the side quest. There's this Fennekin who was sick and who really needed help. You know what that reminded me of? Ash helping Charmander in a rainstorm, and I added the Fennekin to my team. I was like, whoa, I'm just like Ash Ketchum. There's this one side quest specifically that I thought was really cool. Before we fought this mega rogue Hawlucha, there was this trainer who took care of this wild Hawlucha and asked us if everything is alright, because she's been taking care of this wild Hawlucha like if it were like a stray dog. And after we fought this mega rogue Hawlucha and calmed it down, the Hawlucha wanted to stay by the side of the lady. That shit warms my heart, bro. I don't know what to tell you. And controversial take, I really like that this game takes place in one city, which is very different from Legends Arceus, where you had different wild zones to travel in, which did make Legends A feel very limited in terms of exploration. But I really like the addition of Pokemon being able to live outside of the wild zones. It made the world feel much more lived in. And discovering Pokemon outside of the wild zone that I really liked was such a treat. Like you can find Gumi like on rooftops. I wanted a Gumi, I couldn't catch it. Damn it. I was really upset, and getting more wild areas as the game progresses made progressing the story a lot more tolerable. Even if they do kind of like suck in terms of exploration and catching Pokemon, I still found some charm in it.
Oh wait, that's kind of cute.
And that's the issue. Even if some of these things are heavily flawed, I still enjoy them. Unfortunately, I am part of the problem. Pokemon is $1 billion franchise, and I, as a filthy consumer, keep contributing to the problem, and Pokemon will get away with putting out mediocre games. I'm just the same as the people who buy the new Call of Duty and NBA 2K every year. I own a Jigglypuff plushie. I don't even care about Jigglypuff that much. And I kinda do have this weird guilt just for just liking this game. I'm losing so much street cred as a pretentious video game reviewer, guys. You don't even understand. I'm not that food critic from Ratatouille who has the high-end taste. I'm more of that fat orange rat. But in all actuality, should you actually feel guilty for liking a Pokemon game? No. And Pokemon is flawed, and I don't care. But guys, you don't care either. I'm not the only one who's putting money in their pockets, so I know I'm not the only one with this issue. You know, it's totally okay to like something that's perfectly mid. Sometimes you don't want that 10 out of 10 ambitious, innovating video game experience. Sometimes I want Wingstop. You know, I love Hollow Knight, I love Dark Souls, I love Final Fantasy VII, but those games are fucking long. But like sometimes you don't want to think that hard. Some of you fuckers still play League of Legends. Hell, I'll admit it, I still play Valorant. This game is hot ass, but I still play it because I'm familiar with it. Sometimes you want that familiarity that brings you comfort, even if you want to find comfort in hot ass. Valorant is my mid-comfort trash. And Pokemon is my mid-comfort trash. You know in that Pokemon anime movie where Ash wakes up in a world without Pokemon and his life is so sad and depressing and voidless? That's me. I'm Ash in that universe. That's kind of sad. TLDR, we actually don't care that much about things being technically or fundamentally perfect, because as long as the game can provide a fulfilling experience, you don't mind the flaws as much. Is that a good note to end on? I don't know. This video is fucking weird. Like and subscribe.